Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Getting Personal with Parkinson's, a monthly Facebook Live conversation series. I'm Whitney Chapman, the Programming and Production Coordinator for the Edmund J. Safra Wellness Program at the Marlene Meyerson JCC Manhattan, which is a Northwell program, not just endorsed, but financed through a Northwell grant and is one of the Northwell Community Parkinson's programs. For almost 15 years, the JCC has been hosting programs for individuals living with Parkinson's, and you can find these programs at our website, www.mmjccm.org/Parkinson's. You can see the link below in the comments section. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, welcome. This program is for anyone who's impacted by Parkinson's, those who are diagnosed, as well as family and friends and people who know someone living with Parkinson's. We want these conversations to help put a face to Parkinson's and to introduce you to people living and thriving with PD. We will speak with experts in the field sharing research, families and friends, and just people who have been on this journey. If you want to be a guest on our show, or if you know someone we should talk to, or if there's a topic you want us to cover, please let me know. All your inquiries can be directed to me, Whitney Chapman, at wchapman, that's wchapman, at mmjccm.org, and I will be sure to get back in touch with you. We'll put that information below in the comment section as well. Now, I'd like to introduce you to Dennery Martinez and Lennie Watts. Dennery is the daughter of Bob Watts, and like her father, she was a 911 responder and is married with a 12-year-old daughter. Lennie is Bob's youngest brother and Dennery's uncle. He is a multi-award-winning cabaret performer, an outstanding vocalist, director, producer, and booking manager. Recently, I had a conversation with Dennery and Lennie, who told me about their father or brother, Bob Watts, and we pre-recorded our conversation. I want to share that conversation with you now, and I'll be back afterwards to share your thoughts and comments and any questions you may have. Dennery and Lennie, welcome to Getting Personal with Parkinson's. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you
for having us.
So let me just start by asking, tell me about Bob. Tell me about your dad and your brother. Dennery, I'll let you go first.
Well, I mean, my dad, we were a very close family, and I'm an only child, so very, very close, very involved in my life, all throughout my entire life. And then towards the end of his life, my parents moved in with us.
How old were you when your father got diagnosed?
So I had asked my mom this because I couldn't really remember like when he was diagnosed, but apparently it was like back in 2002. So I was like 21 years old. But I don't remember like him being like, there being like a diagnosis and being like, I have Parkinson's, like this is it. I remember maybe like a couple years later, like 2004, 2005, like noticing symptoms of his and then being like, okay, like is something wrong? Like if we were sitting having family dinner and we were passing dishes or he was like scooping something out, I was noticing that his hands were shaking. I definitely know it started with like the shaking hands. And I think even then when it was just that, he was kind of downplaying it as, you know, not Parkinson's, something else. But then it kind of started to progress a little bit more. He definitely progressed physically first more than mentally.
What brought you to the decision of having your dad and I take it your mom in with you?
They lived very close to us anyway, only like probably a mile away from us. It was me and my husband and my only daughter. And my mom was watching my daughter a lot when we were at work and stuff. And then also trying to balance watching my dad and keeping an eye on him. And we just kind of thought maybe it would be easier if we were all in one place. We had bought a house that had a full finished basement with rooms and bathroom and a wet bar in the basement. So originally they had moved into our basement. Then about a year after they moved in with us, my dad ended up falling down the stairs and breaking his back. And that's when we realized maybe they should move upstairs and we should move downstairs. So we made a little switch so that it would be a little bit easier for him to be just on one floor and not have to deal with the steps.
That's a huge choice to make.
It is.
No, I mean, yeah, tell me about that.
It got harder as things progressed. My daughter was younger. She's only 12 now. So it was very scary for her to see my dad fall, and some of the mental things that my dad was going through with the medications and hallucinations and stuff were a little scary for her. She was kind of becoming like almost physically ill because she was so worried about her grandpa all the time. So they were very, very close. It really got to her to see him in such bad shape all the time.
How did you talk with your daughter about what was going on with your father? I mean, that's a very interesting place to be the daughter who's somewhat the caregiver and being a caregiver to your daughter. How did you handle it with her? And how did it feel for you?
We were really honest with her. She's also an only child, and I was an only child. And so, she was doted on by them, and they were very close. And so we just tried to really be as honest as possible with her and kind of talk her through like why things were the way they were, to try not to be so afraid, and that a lot of it really was the side effects from the medication that you have to take for the Parkinson's, not necessarily just the Parkinson's itself.
Yeah.
So we just really tried to keep it open and honest with her.
And Lennie, what was it like for you finding out that your brother had Parkinson's?
Like Dennery, I don't exactly remember how it happened. I think he told me on the telephone. I think we were we didn't grow up. So we're very, I'm the youngest of five and he's the second oldest of five. So there was a big age difference between us. And when I was growing up, he was in Vietnam for most of my childhood. But then as we both got older and became adults, we actually became pretty close, and we would talk on the phone a lot. And I think that's kind of how he told me about it. He was a fire chief and a 911. He ran the 911 services. At Dennery as a 911 operator. He was an air traffic controller. He was he was like the quintessential big brother. So he was not the one in the family that would be, prone to histrionics or he downplayed all of that kind of stuff. When I would see him twice a year, seeing it all kind of happen. And it wasn't like even discussed a lot, it was just kind of what it was.
What was that impact on you?
Well, because I'm in New York and they're in Missouri. The rest of my family's in Missouri, which is where Dennery is now. At first I think there was a lot of denial on all of our sake because of the change in his demeanor. He was the guy that we always went to. He was the guy that knew how to fix everything. He was the guy. He took care when my parents died. He took care of all of that. He was there. He's always been there for all of us, and sort of watched this kind of steady decline. Part of you was like, oh, come on, Bobby, get out of it, snap out of it, not knowing that this was the new normal for him. And it was very frustrating for him too, always being that person, to not be able to be that person. And like Dennery said, the physical aspects went first. As far as I was concerned, his mind was literally the very last thing to go. His sense of humor was there till the very end. So he knew what was going on constantly, I think, but didn't know how to deal with it, which made it really frustrating. I mean, I think at times it's almost easier to just think, well, maybe it'd just be easier if you just lost your mental facility and just didn't know what was going on. Mm-hmm. But he did. And so you could see that. And I would come home usually twice a year, once over the summer and once for the holidays. And I would stay with them. When my parents died, I started staying with Bobby which, well, they all lived together at one point, like Dennery said. So we were all kind of together in that sense. So I could kind of see that happening there. And it was just, weird and scary. We had never dealt with anything like that before. And so my father lived to be 87, and he was right up until the end. And, and my mom was fine until she wasn't, and then she passed away. And so it was weird to see him going through this long, drawn out kind of process. But it really, the last couple of years were really noticeable because it was hard for him to walk. It was hard for him to get out of the chair. I wasn't there when he had any of these episodes, like the paranoia and the, that she could tell you stories if you want to hear them, but I didn't witness any of that, but I witnessed the aftermath of it and how everybody was trying to deal with it. And so it was just hard. It's just hard to watch, when you see somebody that you've looked up to and you love, like totally, not able to be the person that they are. And I also want to point out that he kind of didn't really have any side effects until he retired. Like he had worked his entire life so that he could have a retirement. And the second he retired, he became ill and didn't really get to enjoy any of his retirement years. So that was also sad to watch because, somebody has worked their entire life to get to a certain point, and then they spend the rest of their life either being taken care of, or in my sister-in-law's situation, taking care of that person and not being able to enjoy their retirement.
How did your mom or grandmother, Bob's wife, how did she manage through this?
At first I feel like it was easy. My mom is a definite caretaker. Like she wants to take care of everybody. And so, that kind of occupied her time. Once she watched my daughter, still watches my daughter whenever we need her to, but it was okay, her filling her time, taking care of my dad. And then it became almost too much for her to handle. And that's where we really struggled because my dad was still kind of in denial that he was as bad as he was. So it was hard because my mom was trying to take care of him. It was getting to the point where she couldn't lift him and carry him and do all the things that she could. She couldn't really leave the house because thinking that he was still much more okay than he was, would leave the house. And we would find him, around the corner fallen over, or, we wouldn't be able to find him for a while and we would have to drive the neighborhood and we would find him walking around because he still thought he was capable of all those things. And it was almost like once people left, he wanted to prove that he could go out and be okay. And then he wasn't. So it did get to a point where we really had to sit down and say, like, this is too much for us because we can't physically have eyes on him 24/7. And he really did need that at that point.
What advice would you give someone who is starting to see the things like what you just shared makes it very real? For many of us, we've seen that kind of a story played out on a TV episode of something or other, right? But this is your father. This is your brother. What pointers either do you wish you had realized, or what pointers would you give somebody if they were watching their loved one start to have this part of the journey?
Definitely patience. You need a lot of patience because not only are you dealing with all the changes that are happening with somebody, you're also dealing with maybe them not wanting to fully admit that they are going through those changes. It was very hard when, we had to take my dad's keys and he couldn't drive a car anymore and he still thought he was fully capable of driving a car. So just, a lot of patience and a lot of compassion. Sometimes I think back and wish that I would have had a little bit more compassion. Like Lennie said, it was so hard to not just be like, snap out of it because he was so strong for so long, and he was the one that did everything. So it was so hard to really understand that like his mind and his body like couldn't do that anymore, even though we kind of expected it. So I mean, those are definitely things that I feel like the patience and compassion, and knowing when you need help, like when it gets to the point that you need help, and utilizing the resources that are out there, because there are resources out there that you can use. There's, well, obviously music therapy and how that helps, and also exercise and that kind of stuff, which my dad protested. He never his whole life exercised, and then of course we expected him to once he got sick, and thought, well, why won't you do it now? But you know, getting him involved, we did end up sending him to like a almost kind of like a veterans like daycare during the day, where they did stuff, and they, you know, had groups and had music and had things where he could get his mind involved a little bit more than just kind of like sitting around the house all day long.
And I want to ask you one more question, then I have some questions for Lennie. How did you and your mom and your family, not your father, what did you do for support? What were your resources? Was there friends, family, church, religious support? What did you seek out?
Probably just kind of leaned on each other. I think at that point we felt like even like our family that didn't live with us didn't really understand like the volume of what we were going through. It's hard when you don't live there, and you know, like Lennie only seeing him twice a year, like didn't see the everyday stuff, just the stuff that he, you know, we would share it with him, but it's hard when you're not there to physically see what's going on. So we really probably should have reached out and utilized some better resources for support, but we mostly just kind of leaned on each other, talking things out and airing our frustrations and what we could do different and how we could try and make it better and try and make it easier on everyone.
Now, Lennie, you and I have spoken before, and you mentioned that you come from a musical family, and I would love for you to share the musicality of your brother.
Well, as I said before, when I grew up, he had a band, you know, like I think most teenagers did in the late 60s, early 70s, like a garage band or a basement band. And he was a drummer. He played the drums in the band. And I just remember like them rehearsing in the basement and the bass being so cranked up that the stuff would fall off the wall in my mom's kitchen. And she, you know, they had those plates, you know, that they hung on the wall back in the 70s. And they were all like glued and cracked because they kept falling off from the band. Dennery sings. She's in a quartet. She's in the Sweet Adelines, and she sings in a choir, and she's very musical. And I think once she started developing that, he started kind of living through her quartet. Like he loved the Sweet Adelines, and he would, you know, all about that kind of stuff. And then at the end, my sister, Nordis, who used to go over there, I guess, once a week or something and take him to lunch. She would do that, and then that would give my sister-in-law and Dennery a little bit of a break, and it would give her a chance to see. They would just go by themselves and go have lunch and go shopping or do whatever. And she said they were in the car once, and he just said, "Do you mind if I sing?" There was something on the thing, and he said, "Do you mind if I sing?" And she was like, "Sing it out," you know? And so they were driving, and he was just singing along with whatever it was, like at the top of his lungs. And she said that it was really like hard for her to not like pull over like in tears, because it was like he was just like so passionately singing it. And my brother was many things, but he was not. Our whole family, you know, we're Midwestern, you know, there's not a lot of emotion going on in our family, you know, overt emotion. And so for him to just kind of like, you know, have that moment was really kind of startling. And then I think he bought himself a little drum kit, like an electronic drum kit that he would try to, there's one specific time, it was the Christmas maybe before the year that he passed away. We all went to dinner when I was home, and we went to this restaurant, and he was in a horrible shape. Like he couldn't walk, he could barely stand up, and he kept stumbling over things. My Dennery's husband had to like take him to the bathroom because he couldn't even walk to get to the bathroom. And then we decided to go, and so we kind of had to help him and get him into the car. And it was a big struggle to get him into the car, but we all got into the car. And as soon as the door shut, he looks up and he said, "So I guess you don't want me to drive?" I mean, so he had his sense of humor, like all the way up until that point. I mean, and then you just had to laugh. I mean, and this was like a severe night, like it was bad, like he couldn't, and so that was the thing with him, was his sense of humor. And I mean, that's what I noticed, the most. And then just loving, I mean, he just loved his family, like deeply loved his family, and Dennery, and especially Dennery's daughter. I mean, there was another time he bought her this trampoline, and it was in the back of the car and it was hidden. And I was there for the summer, and he said, "Can you come out to the car and help me bring this in?" Well, of course I couldn't, because it weighed like 10,000 pounds. It was this huge thing in a big box. And he started crying, and he goes, "I have to give this to her." And he started crying, and I'm like, "What's the matter?" And he goes, "I just don't think I'm going to be around long enough to watch her enjoy any of this." He knew that it was, that he was on a clock, but he didn't know how to deal with it, and so that kind of stuff was just heartbreaking, because that was not his persona, it was not his thing. And so when you saw him kind of have those things, it really kind of hit home that this was not just snap out of it and get it together, that there was never going to be a get it together.
What did watching your brother's journey, how did that change you in terms of how you're living your life?
Well, I'm going to Disney World next week. I have no business going to Disney World next week, but I'm going with another part of my family. And I don't get to see my family except twice a year for holidays, and it's all consumed by holidays. So when this opportunity came up, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go. I can't afford it. I'm going to go. I feel like it really opened my eyes to, and I just turned 60, and I'm the youngest of the family. So it's inevitable that I'm going to watch, if things go as planned and I don't run out in front of a bus or something, I'm going to watch my brothers and sisters go through some stuff. So preparing, I don't know, can you ever prepare for that? I don't know. But I'm just really, it did really make me just say, I have to live my life. I mean, I love my family. I get along with my family. I'm one of the few people, when I go home for the holidays, I go for like a month, and everybody's like, "Are you out of your mind?" And I was like, well, I actually like my family, and they like it when I'm there. So I want to take advantage of it when I can. But I think it's really just about enjoying your life, because he did not get to enjoy. He should have been spending those last years traveling, enjoying his family, doing what he wanted to do, because he worked so hard. I also want to point out, not that this really matters, but they attributed his Parkinson's to his time in Vietnam, to Agent Orange. So when I first heard he had Parkinson's, my selfish thing was like, oh shit, is this hereditary? Dennery's husband's father also has Parkinson's, that they've attributed to Vietnam.
Yeah, and they are fairly the same age, and they were actually became pretty close. Once my husband and I became married, they would go and golf together. But when you talked about the difference in people's journeys through Parkinson's, it's so funny, because theirs was so very different. Where my dad's was more physical at the beginning, my father-in-law did not have the physical stuff at the beginning. In fact, my father-in-law is just now starting to get some of the physical things where he's falling and stuff like that. His was definitely more mental at the beginning. My father-in-law, he was very adamant about trying to find all the things he could possibly do to get better. He would go and he would do the exercises, and he would do the hot yoga and all the things that they recommend to do, where my dad was like, oh, I don't need to do any of that stuff. So they definitely, we have lived two completely different journeys between the both of them.
Thank you for talking about your, looking at this and, oh my gosh, is this me? It's not a conversation that happens a lot. When someone in a family gets it, we may all think it, but not everybody admits, I did go to my doctor and find out like what are my chances or what is the hereditary thing. And it's still not quite an unknown. There are certain families where it tends to run in the family, but in my research so far, I haven't seen someone that says it's definitely hereditary or it's definitely environmentally influenced. I think there's talk on both sides that can be true. So thank you for bringing that up and sharing it.
Well, I think it's a good thing, especially when you're single, you live on the other side of the country from everybody in your family. And it's like, and watching the struggles, it's like, how am I going to be able to go, so it was kind of a thing that enters your mind, what can I do to prevent this? Nothing. If it's there, I guess, but yeah, you just think about it.
For someone who is on this journey with Parkinson's, another family, for example, are there things that you are, I don't know how to phrase this, that Parkinson's taught you in terms of your relationship with your father? Or you kind of mentioned it, Lennie, about like being grateful and looking at your life and living your life. But are pointers or things, I don't say silver linings, but are there things that you took away from this journey that weren't always sad?
I mean, it definitely, I think, made us closer, but maybe not in the way I would have liked. I wish we could have spent time doing more things, and him enjoying my daughter's life easier. But we did make an effort to do a lot of stuff. Probably, oh gosh, it was probably in 2011 or 2012, for Christmas, I had gotten my parents a trip to Mexico with us. So we all went together because I knew it was getting to the point where maybe we wouldn't be able to do a big family trip together again after that. And my dad was super leery about traveling out of the country. That wasn't something that he did, very often at all. But, we convinced him that it was perfectly fine and safe, and he went and ended up having like a really great time. And so I was really happy that we had done something like that we probably wouldn't have done without the Parkinson's, but just wanting to have something that the five of us together could do. And then we were really cognizant about trying to bring him. My daughter plays softball. She plays softball pretty in depth. And he loved softball because I had also played softball. And so he was always very involved in sports. He coached my sports teams. And so when Ellie started playing, it was like, oh, I get to live through all this again. But by that time, it was really almost impossible for him to move himself. But we did make an effort to get him out to as many games as we physically could. So I feel like those are things that we really just, once the Parkinson's hit, we were like, we really want to make as many memories as we can. Because, like he had even said, wasn't sure how long we were going to be able to make those memories.
How long was your dad's journey with Parkinson's, if you have an idea?
Well, he was diagnosed in 2002 and died in 2020. So, and then probably was having issues before he was diagnosed, but, weren't, super noticeable. But so it was a good 18 years of battling through that, and a much slower progression at the beginning. And then just kind of hit a point where then things started happening much quicker. But it was definitely a long, drawn out journey. I had sat towards the end and thought to myself, I don't really remember a time before my dad was sick. It was hard to go back and remember like when he was good and physically able to just do whatever he wanted to do. And like Lennie said, he was working then because that stuff didn't really start to really go downhill until after he retired. So he didn't get to enjoy the retirement like he should have been able to enjoy it.
This question is for both of you. What qualities of Bob's do you carry on? How is he in your world now, or in who you are?
Definitely my involvement with my daughter. I try not to miss anything, even if that means like taking less pay at work or having to find people to switch with so I can go. My daughter has played like 64 softball games since March, and I have not missed one. So just not wanting to miss out on anything and be involved. And then I do think I have definitely his leadership and take charge stuff I see it in myself, and his probably his stubbornness too a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like as I get older, I feel like, a few of us where there's five of us, four of us look like my mom and one looked like my father more. And we were on the mom side. So as I get older and I look in the mirror, I kind of see my brother when I look in the mirror, which is interesting. I never thought that growing up. My brother was a helper. Like every job he ever did was a service. It was in service to someone else, whether it was a fire chief, going into the army, 911, air traffic controller. I mean, that's the stuff that he did, And so I feel like in a way, I'm kind of doing the same thing, but through music. I teach, I help people with music. As I get older, you just learn that you're not here forever. And we all get older. It's the family is really an important thing. And I kind of learned that from him. There was no more of a family person than my brother.
When people get older, they don't see their cousins, they don't see their uncles, they don't see their aunts anymore. And all that kind of goes by the wayside as you form your own families and people get older. So I do appreciate that, my grandparents and then through my dad, always kind of kept us together and visiting, and we still do that.
I thank you for sharing him with us today, and also sharing what your journey was like. Sharing your story is really important today because you're going to be able to provide insights to people who are on this journey. And we don't know what their journey is going to be like. But just in knowing that you're not alone, you're not the only person who's walked down this path. And to share both the intimate journey of Dennery being the daughter and the caregiver, and Lennie being both the brother and the person who's far away. I mean, those are two very different dynamics, and yet hearing the stories together really helped paint a picture for me of the role that the family plays in this journey. And it can be a different role based on your relationship, based on where you live. And how important that is.
I really appreciated Dennery and Lennie's honesty with sharing their story and giving us an insight on who Bob Watts was. It was really thought-provoking. And if you have thoughts or comments that you wish to share, please put them in the chat or the comment section below. I also want to let you know that if you found this conversation helpful, or someone who might appreciate hearing it, if you would do us the kind favor of pressing the share button at the bottom to help us spread the word, not only about this conversation, but about the Parkinson's wellness programs here at the JCC. I want to remind you that these conversations are intended for you, to help you learn more about Parkinson's, to share the journey that you are having, and to help us share it with you. If you have questions about living with Parkinson's or how to care for someone living with Parkinson's, please let us know. You can visit our website, www.mmjccm.org/Parkinson's, or you can email me directly. I'm Whitney Chapman, and my email is wchapman@mmjccm.org. I want to let you know that our next episode will be on Monday, July 11th, when we will talk with Edward Shepherd of itsnotfunny.org. It's an organization in Australia where he will be coming to share his journey that helps people living with Parkinson's. So in the meantime, take care, everyone. Have a wonderful day.